Today, President Trump announces the U.S. will impose a 25% tariff on any country that buys oil.
If they buy their oil from Venezuela, they have to pay a 25% tariff to do business with the United States.
Donald Trump has promised to slap a 25% tariff.
We have defeated previous sanctions, and we will defeat those to come as well.
Any country that buys oil and gas from Venezuela, China is a leading importer of Venezuelan oil.
中方对此坚决反对。我们呼吁美方停止干涉委内瑞拉内政，废除对委内瑞拉的非法单边制裁。
Is this the beginning of a global oil war? Donald Trump is back, and this time, he's not just targeting China or Mexico. He's going after anyone who dares to buy Venezuelan oil. With a threat to slap a 25% tariff on any country importing crude from Caracas, Trump has reignited a dangerous standoff that could destabilize global markets and send shockwaves through Latin America. As of March 25, 2025, in a fiery campaign rally in Houston, Trump declared that if he returns to the White House, he will punish any nation that purchases oil from the Nicolas Maduro regime. The ultimatum? A 25% tariff on those countries' exports to the United States. This bold move could rewrite the rules of global energy politics and plunge the Western Hemisphere into a full-blown diplomatic crisis. Venezuela, once Latin America's richest nation, collapsed under years of corruption, hyperinflation, and brutal U.S. sanctions. But in recent months, there's been a flicker of recovery. The Biden administration had quietly eased sanctions in 2023, allowing Chevron and others to resume limited operations. And in 2024, oil production in Venezuela jumped above 900,000 barrels per day for the first time since 2019. Nations like India and China quickly moved to fill their tanks with Venezuela's discounted crude. Even European countries were reportedly considering resuming imports in 2025 as global oil prices continued to spike. But Trump is slamming the brakes. Speaking on Monday, Trump called Venezuela a narco-dictatorship and accused the Biden administration of bankrolling tyranny by letting Maduro sell oil again. He vowed to cut off any country that dares to fuel Maduro's comeback. At the heart of this standoff lies a fundamental question. Should the world isolate Venezuela or engage it? Trump's threat of a 25% tariff doesn't just target Venezuela, it targets its buyers. That means major economies like India, Turkey, and even some European allies could soon be in Trump's crosshairs. Supporters of Trump's hardline stance argue that allowing Maduro access to international markets is a betrayal of human rights. They claim that every barrel sold strengthens a regime accused of torture, election rigging, and brutal crackdowns on dissent. Florida Senator Marco Rubio echoed this view, saying on Tuesday, "Buying oil from Maduro is the same as buying bullets for a dictator." But critics warn this strategy could backfire, big time. By threatening countries that rely on affordable oil, Trump risks alienating key partners and pushing them further into the arms of China and Russia. Beijing has already responded cautiously, saying it will continue normal trade relations with Venezuela, regardless of U.S. pressure. Meanwhile, analysts fear Trump's plan could trigger retaliatory tariffs, disrupt global supply chains, and send fuel prices soaring, right as Americans head into summer travel season. So, what's really at stake here? First, this is a geopolitical chess match, not just an economic one. Venezuela controls the world's largest proven oil reserves. Cutting it off entirely could squeeze the global market, especially if Middle Eastern tensions remain volatile. Second, Trump's move is a direct challenge to Biden's more pragmatic Latin America policy. While the Biden administration has tied sanctions relief to democratic reforms, Trump is demanding total isolation. It's a return to the maximum pressure doctrine that defined his first term. But here's the irony. Isolating Venezuela in 2019 didn't work. The Maduro regime survived. Millions of Venezuelans fled, and U.S. oil companies lost ground to Chinese and Russian firms. Now, with Venezuela slowly stabilizing and talks of possible elections in 2025, some fear Trump's threat could derail fragile progress and provoke Maduro to double down. Even within the U.S., the reaction is divided. Oil industry insiders warn that if Venezuela is pushed back into isolation, American refiners in the Gulf Coast could suffer. They've relied on Venezuelan heavy crude for decades. One Houston-based executive told Reuters anonymously, "We can't pretend this doesn't impact us." And then there's the politics. Trump knows Venezuela is a wedge issue, especially in swing states like Florida, where large Venezuelan and Cuban exile communities view Maduro as a brutal socialist dictator. But his broader tariffs could strain U.S. relations with key allies and developing economies. Is Trump willing to risk a trade war just to punish Maduro? In the end, this isn't just about oil. It's about ideology, global power, and how far the U.S. is willing to go to reshape the world order. Trump's 25% tariff threat could isolate Maduro, or isolate America. It could pressure authoritarian regimes, or ignite new alliances between our adversaries. As of this week, the world is watching and waiting. Will this bold gamble bring down a dictator or spark an international economic showdown? What do you think? Is Trump right to draw a hard line against Venezuelan oil, or is this a dangerous escalation with global consequences? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more hard-hitting global updates every week.
The Trump administration has now taken unprecedented action. For the first time ever, the United States has formally denied Mexico's request for special water delivery.
Welcome back. Well, the United States is rejecting Mexico's request for a special water delivery to Tijuana.
This isn't about tariffs. It's not about trade deals. It's about survival. In a stunning move that's shaking the U.S.-Mexico relationship to its core, Donald Trump is now turning off the tap. Literally. No more water for Mexico. The former president and now presidential frontrunner for 2024 has drawn a hard line in the dirt. No compliance, no Colorado River water. But what's behind this water war? And why are people calling it the boldest pressure tactic Trump has used yet? Let's break it all down. As of March 25, 2025, the United States has officially begun restricting the flow of water from the Colorado River into Mexico, marking the first time in 80 years that this critical provision in the 1944 U.S.-Mexico Water Treaty has been enforced with such intensity. The original treaty requires the U.S. to send 1.5 million acre-feet of Colorado River water to Mexico annually. In return, Mexico must deliver water from the Rio Conchos and Rio Grande to support U.S. farmers, especially in Texas. But according to U.S. officials, that's exactly where the problem lies. Mexico, they say, hasn't been holding up its end of the deal. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, in a speech delivered Monday morning, declared, "Enough is enough. We will no longer subsidize a system where Mexico gets water for free while our own farmers in the Rio Grande Valley are suffering." First, Mexico's treaty violations. According to the U.S. Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs, Mexico has consistently fallen short of its Rio Grande water delivery obligations. Farmers in southern Texas are facing devastating crop losses as a result, with irrigation systems running dry. One Texas rancher put it plainly, "We're dying out here, while Mexico gets a free pass." Second, Trump's water shutoff is no bluff. Unlike previous administrations that looked the other way, Trump is playing hardball. Sources inside the Trump transition team told Western Journal that restricting water flow is a matter of national sovereignty and economic fairness. They argue that water isn't just a resource, it's a bargaining chip. And in Trump's world, you don't give away leverage unless you get something back. Third, this is about more than water. Behind the scenes, this move is also tied to broader frustrations with Mexico's failure to stop raw sewage from Tijuana flowing into San Diego's coastal waters. The EPA reports that U.S. Navy SEALs training near the area have fallen ill due to pollution, and the Trump team has had enough. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin thundered, "We will not allow another ounce of contaminated runoff to poison our citizens or our soldiers. Mexico must take responsibility." Supporters of the move are calling it genius. They say this is the Trump doctrine in action. Use America's power, economic, military, and natural, to demand fairness. Texas Senator Ted Cruz applauded the decision, saying, "Trump is standing up for American farmers. We've been waiting for leadership like this for decades." The agricultural sector in Texas, already crippled by years of drought, sees this as a lifeline and a warning shot to Mexico. No more broken promises. But critics see danger. Mexican officials are calling the move a violation of humanitarian norms, warning of mass water shortages in border cities like Tijuana. The Mexican government says it's working to fulfill treaty obligations, but climate change and poor infrastructure have slowed progress. Some fear that cutting off water could trigger retaliation, economic, diplomatic, or even through border policy. Others argue it sets a dangerous precedent, that vital resources can be weaponized in international politics. Still, Trump allies insist that if Mexico wants diplomacy, they need to start with compliance. As of March 25th, no agreement has been reached, and Mexico has vowed to raise the issue before international water courts. So, where does this end? Is Trump's move a brilliant strategic play to protect American farmers and force Mexico's hand? Or is it a reckless gamble that risks humanitarian fallout and long-term diplomatic damage? One thing's for sure, water is now a weapon, and if Trump wins in November, this could be just the beginning of a radically different U.S. foreign policy based on hard leverage over soft diplomacy. What do you think? Is Trump right to cut off Mexico's water? Or has he gone too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more breaking analysis on politics, power, and global strategy.
That the president is going to impose what they're calling secondary sanctions on Venezuela.
Donald Trump, the Republican leader,
taking on countries for buying oil from Venezuela.
President Trump says the U.S. will place a 25% tariff on imports from all countries that buy oil or gas from Venezuela.
Another economic shockwave just hit the global markets, and it's got Trump's name all over it. In a dramatic move that's already rattling U.S. trading partners and sent D.C. into a frenzy, Donald Trump has just doubled down on tariffs, this time zeroing in on Venezuela and vowing to escalate what he calls reciprocal tariffs. But is this a masterstroke of economic nationalism or the start of a global trade unraveling? As of March 25, 2025, the former president and likely Republican nominee is ramping up one of his signature tactics, trade weaponization. And the message is clear. If you're not playing fair with America, you'll pay. This week's announcement comes amid Trump's campaign trail resurgence, where he's been pushing an increasingly aggressive economic agenda. In a live address earlier today, Trump laid out new details about a secondary tariff targeting Venezuela, a nation already crushed under U.S. sanctions and hyperinflation. But the real headline? Trump's pledge to initiate a narrowed set of reciprocal tariffs against countries he claims are abusing trade imbalances with the U.S. If that sounds familiar, it's because Trump's first term was defined by sweeping tariffs against China, Europe, and others under the banner of America First. But this time, it's more calculated, more specific, and potentially more explosive. Under the new plan, Trump wants to match tariffs dollar for dollar against any country imposing higher tariffs on American goods, a strategy he claims will stop cheating and level the playing field. Critics, however, warn this could backfire spectacularly, sparking retaliations, hurting U.S. exporters, and inflaming diplomatic tensions. Trump's immediate focus on Venezuela is symbolic but strategic. The country has been under U.S. sanctions for years, and its oil exports are already tightly restricted. The new secondary tariff would target any third-party nation or company that does business with sanctioned Venezuelan firms, a move reminiscent of the maximum pressure tactics once used on Iran. The second and more far-reaching development is the reciprocal tariff doctrine. Trump claims countries like India, Germany, and even Canada are charging U.S. goods at outrageously high rates while expecting open access to American markets in return. Under his plan, if a country places a 25% tariff on U.S. steel, the U.S. will match it with a 25% tariff on their steel. But this is where things get tricky. Trade experts argue such a strategy violates WTO principles and could provoke international legal battles. Worse, it risks reawakening tit-for-tat trade wars that disrupted global supply chains during Trump's first term. Economists are also divided. Supporters say Trump's tough stance is necessary to defend American industry. They point to manufacturing job losses, trade deficits, and foreign protectionism as justification for hitting back. Critics, however, fear this approach will trigger economic whiplash, raising consumer prices, spooking investors, and sparking retaliation that could cost the U.S. billions. Already, the Dow slipped 300 points following the announcement, and Asian markets responded with unease overnight. So what's the real game here? Is Trump playing 4D chess, or is he lighting a match near a powder keg? Politically, it's a clear message to his base. Trump is still the economic warrior ready to confront what he calls global freeloaders. It's a revival of his 2016 and 2020 messaging, updated for a world still recovering from pandemic disruptions and the Ukraine war. But geopolitically, this could mark a turning point. Countries like China and Brazil, already wary of U.S. intentions, may see this as economic aggression, not negotiation. That could lead to a new era of deglobalization, where nations retreat into protectionist bunkers instead of working together. There's also the question of enforcement. Trump isn't president yet. These are campaign promises, not executive orders. But the markets are already reacting as if this is the future. Why? Because polls are tightening, and Trump's economic agenda is resonating with blue-collar voters in swing states. If elected, there's little doubt he would move fast to implement these tariffs, and global leaders are taking note. Meanwhile, President Biden's camp has criticized the move as reckless and dangerous, arguing it will hurt American farmers and exporters. But they've stopped short of offering a counter-strategy, perhaps wary of alienating the same voters who feel left behind by global trade. This isn't just about tariffs. It's about America's place in the global economy, and whether Trump's America First vision is on the verge of a comeback. Are these tariffs a bold correction to years of trade imbalance, or a ticking time bomb for the world economy? With Venezuela in the crosshairs and U.S. allies eyeing their next moves, one thing is clear: the trade wars are far from over. They're just getting started again. What do you think? Is Trump's tariff plan the key to American prosperity, or a path to isolation and economic blowback? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more breaking analysis and political power plays.
Trump is prepping tariffs on potentially trillions of dollars.
Tariffs is the most beautiful word to me in the dictionary. Am I going to impose tariffs on the European Union? No exception. Our country's businesses back that left us.
The United States is applying a 25% tariff.
Tariffs on steel and aluminum.
The countermeasures we take today are strong but proportionate.
President Trump is shaking up global trade again.
To burden our economies with such tariffs. Jobs are at stake.
In a tit-for-tat spat that could impact the global economy.
A new trade war is brewing, and this time it's not between the U.S. and China. It's between Washington and its oldest allies in Europe. Donald Trump is back, and so is his economic warfare. But the European Union isn't bowing down. They're preparing a counterstrike that could fracture Western unity and plunge global markets into chaos. So what's really going on behind the scenes of this transatlantic standoff? And how did Elon Musk's Tesla become a central pawn in this explosive trade conflict? As of March 8, 2025, Donald Trump has reignited his long-standing battle with foreign imports. During a fiery campaign rally last week, he promised to slap a 10% across-the-board tariff on all imported goods if re-elected, calling it a matter of economic survival. The former president's rhetoric has always targeted China, but now his sights are fixed on America's allies, especially Germany and France, whose car industries thrive on U.S. sales. And here's the twist. Tesla, the company led by Elon Musk, is at the center of the storm. The automaker just opened a major factory in Berlin. That factory, intended to serve the European market, is now turning into a political flashpoint. With Trump threatening tariffs on EU goods and the EU preparing tariffs in retaliation, Musk's international empire could get caught in the crossfire. First, let's break down what Trump is proposing. His blanket 10% tariff would apply to all imports, regardless of origin. That includes cars, steel, food, pharmaceuticals, you name it. Trump claims this will bring back American jobs and punish what he calls cheating by foreign governments. But here's where the backlash begins. European leaders immediately warned that any such move would violate World Trade Organization rules and undermine years of transatlantic cooperation. As of this week, EU trade officials have begun drafting retaliatory tariffs that would target American tech and manufacturing sectors, including Tesla, Amazon, and even agricultural exports from key U.S. swing states. And the stakes are massive. The U.S. and EU together represent 45% of global GDP. A tit-for-tat tariff war between them wouldn't just hurt carmakers. It could spark a global recession, choke supply chains, and inflame nationalist politics on both continents. Second, this isn't Trump's first foray into economic nationalism. Back in 2018, he launched tariffs against China, Canada, and the EU under Section 232, citing national security. Those moves disrupted trade flows and cost U.S. consumers billions in higher prices. But Trump's base didn't flinch. In fact, Many celebrated his tough guy tactics as long overdue. Now in 2025, he's doubling down and warning that globalism has failed. But this time, the European Union is better prepared. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has called Trump's new plan an assault on fair competition and promised that Europe will not be intimidated. Third, businesses are terrified. Automakers like Volkswagen, BMW, and Stellantis could lose access to one of their biggest markets. On the flip side, Tesla's Berlin Gigafactory, which was meant to be a European crown jewel, could find itself blocked from exporting vehicles back to the U.S. In a statement issued this past week, Tesla warned that politically motivated trade barriers risk destabilizing clean energy goals and harming consumers on both sides of the Atlantic. Even Elon Musk, who previously courted Trump and sat on his business council, is now lobbying the EU to avoid escalation. So, what does all this mean for the future of global trade? Supporters of Trump's strategy argue that the U.S. has been too lenient for too long. They say Europe benefits from low U.S. tariffs while maintaining protectionist rules at home. By confronting the EU directly, they believe Trump is rebalancing decades of unfair trade. But critics warn that this is a dangerous gamble. If the U.S. alienates its allies, it could lose critical support in other geopolitical arenas, especially in efforts to contain China or support Ukraine. And let's not forget the timing. Europe is already under pressure from a sluggish economy, surging energy prices, and a rise in populist movements. A tariff war could fuel anti-American sentiment and drive the EU closer to China, especially in terms of tech and trade cooperation. Meanwhile, major corporations are being forced to rethink global supply chains, delay investments, and hedge their political bets, especially in sectors like EVs, semiconductors, and AI. The bigger question is this: is the world witnessing the collapse of the post-war economic order? If allies can't trade without threats of tariffs and retaliation, what happens to the idea of a free and open global market? The EU isn't backing down. Trump is gearing up for economic battle, and caught in the middle are industries, workers, and voters on both sides of the Atlantic. Will this tariff war erupt into full-blown economic warfare, or is there still a chance to pull back from the brink? Let us know what you think. Is Trump protecting American jobs or endangering global stability? Subscribe for more geopolitical breakdowns, trade war updates, and the stories shaping tomorrow's economy.